Carl Reiner may have passed away on June 29, 2020, but his legacy will live on for generations to come. He was a multi-talented actor and comedian that had a monumental impact on the entertainment industry. He had over 400 credited roles to his name and won 9 Emmys in his illustrious and celebrated career. He was the creator and co-writer of The Dick Van Dyke Show, which is often held as being one of the greatest comedy sitcoms to ever hit the TV screen. In this video, we'll take a look at 10 episodes of The Dick Van Dyke Show that Carl Reiner himself ranked as the best. But Carl Reiner was also a family man with a heart of gold. After our top 10 list, we'll take a look at the heartfelt tweet he posted right before he passed. Make sure to watch the whole video so you don't miss it. Facts Verse presents Carl Reiner's 10 favorite Dick Van Dyke Show episodes. If you're thankful for Carl Reiner's role in entertainment, click the like button. We'll be cherishing his memories for years to come. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. The Alan Brady Show goes to jail. This episode turns a case of mistaken identity into a knee-slapping affair that's sure to produce more than a few belly laughs. The cast of The Alan Brady Show decides to do a favor for an old friend, Lyle Delp, the entertainment director and former convict at Granville State Prison in New York, whom the Petries had met a long time ago when he tried to stick them up armed only with a comb. Rob, Sally, Buddy, and Laura all go to prison to perform for the inmates. The warden even hooks them up with prison uniforms to look the part. It's kind of an unlikely premise for an episode, but if you just roll with it, it eventually pans out to be comedic gold. While decked out in prison stripes, Rob realizes he forgot some props for their act, so he goes back to retrieve them. Separated from the rest of the crew and adorned in prison garb, a guard mistakenly assumes he's an inmate who has lost the privilege to see the show. He takes him back to his cell despite his protests. Fellow inmates refuse to back his story, and convincing the guard of his identity proves to be a sticky situation. Laura is meanwhile worried sick about his disappearance. She knows he must have gotten into trouble. 4.5. In case you were curious about that robbery attempt that we mentioned in the last episode description, this humorous installment gives you the background story to that one. The show is delivered through the lens of Rob's memories, recounting the event that brought the unlikely friends together. Rob and Laura are off on an outing to visit a doctor, as she's very pregnant and expected to deliver any day. After their visit, she starts to experience pre-labor pains just as they hop onto an elevator. The door closes and Lyle Delp, the prison guard from Granville, is the only other occupant. At this point, Lyle has yet to see the light and is committed to a life of crime. Thinking he can pull a fast one on Rob and Laura, he holds them up. Trouble is, the only thing he's armed with is a hair comb. Silly Lyle. The foiled plan goes from bad to worse when the elevator malfunctions, and the trio become trapped in the elevator for several hours. They quickly empathize with each other in an unlikely fashion and even form a bit of a bond. Turns out, emergency scenarios bring people together and are fertile ground for comedic brilliance. Rob decides that it's his duty to play the role of a hero and pushes through the roof paneling and climbs the cables in the shaft to attempt to free themselves. The episode is rife with shenanigans and hijinks as Laura's pregnancy situation ramps up urgency as the escapades unfold. It's excellent comedic timing and storytelling that makes this episode go down in history as being one of the funniest in the entire series. All about eavesdropping. Remember how Laura was pregnant in the elevator? Well, she would eventually give birth to a son, Richie. In this episode, young Richie thinks it would be a hoot to set up a toy called an interplanetary intercom between the Petries' house and their next-door neighbors, Millie and Jerry's house. Richie's good friends with their son, Freddie, so it seems like a relatively innocent venture. Rob and Laura are quickly drawn into the fun when they overhear their neighbors talking about one of Laura's recipes in an unflattering light. They soon find themselves addicted to hearing the true thoughts of the Helper family, although some things are meant to be left unheard. What they learn from eavesdropping quickly draws a wedge between the two couples. Rob and Laura find it nearly impossible to keep their newfound knowledge. Half the episode deals with their reluctance to go to a dinner party at Jerry and Millie's house, and the other act of the episode is full of tension and beating around the bush about their illicit knowledge. Rob and Laura remain passively aggressive while the helpers maintain their innocence and confusion as to why their neighbors are acting so peculiar. October Eve. Carl Reiner rarely appeared on The Dick Van Dyke Show, despite it being his creation. But when he did, he always made a splash. In this scandalous episode, he played a very eccentric artist by the name of Sergei Karpetna. While Rob and Laura are enjoying lunch, the phone rings. Sally tells Laura she's at an art gallery that's having an opening, and that a certain painting is creating quite a few waves. From what we as the audience can gather, the painting in question, which is never shown, is of Laura, presumably, without her clothes on. The show skillfully avoids using the words naked, clothes, or nude as a testament of its impeccable writing. But we get the point, and so does Laura, to her dismay and horror. The episode chronicles Laura's attempts to keep the painting under wraps and her identity as its subject a mystery. Where did I come from? The time comes in a parent's life when their children pose this age-old and dreaded question. When Richie finally poses this formidable inquiry to his father, comedy ensues in a series of flashbacks narrated by a very uncomfortable Rob. Apparently, all Richie knew about his delivery was that it had something to do with a laundry delivery truck. Throughout the flashbacks, we see snapshots of the week that Richie was born and what his parents were up to. Rob was so on edge about the whole thing, he barely got any sleep all week before the big day. He wanted to be ready at any minute just in case he needed to be. He'd even go to bed fully clothed, just in case Laura went into labor in the middle of the night. Due to a bunch of unfortunate strokes of luck, which made for some seriously funny bits, Rob wound up looking ridiculous in a pair of pants that didn't even fit when he and Laura barely made it to the hospital in time for the big event. Never bathe on a Saturday. Carl Reiner's last writing credit on the series, excluding the series finale, was one of the show's funniest defining moments. Rob and Laura are off on their second honeymoon and making the best of their romantic getaway. Laura decides she wants to take a nice hot bath. While she's in the tub, she accidentally gets her big toe stuck in the bathroom faucet. Laura calls for Rob's rescue, but the bathroom door is locked. A smart-aleck hotel maid, bellboy, and even a detective are all called up for assistance. Even a gunshot at the door handle doesn't free her. It would take a locksmith to eventually open up the door and come to Laura's rescue. The curious thing about women. Laura sure could be nosy. Her curiosity often got the better of her. Rob had been routinely annoyed that she would open his mail and read it before he did. The first act of the episode involves him explaining to her that it's not that he doesn't want her to read his mail. It's the fact that he'd like to get a chance first. Fair enough. The couple apologizes to each other, and Laura agrees to not open another piece of his mail without his permission. And then a test of her promise comes in the form of a large delivery box. She struggles going back and forth on whether she'll take a peek inside. Despite her commitment to upholding her promise, her curiosity eventually gets the best of her. Guess what she finds when she opens up the package? A giant self-inflating raft. Looks like she's busted. The episode is perhaps the funniest in the series, and yet another example of Carl Reiner's comedic writing aptitude. It may look like a walnut. Rob watches a scary sci-fi film that unnerves Laura so much she hides under the bed. In the film, alien invaders enact a plan to take over the planet using technology that resembles walnuts of all things. The next day, Laura is oddly calm and walnuts are strewn across the house. Laura is even preparing Rob's favorite breakfast, scrambled walnuts. Rob decides to brush it off and go to work, but the walnuts seem to be following him. He comes across an alien named Kolak, who resembles Danny Thomas, who threatens to rob him of his thumbs and imagination. The episode would actually serve as laying the groundwork for the iconic character of Mork, played by Robin Williams a decade later on the hit show Happy Days. Oh, and in case you're wondering, Rob never lost his thumbs. Spoiler alert, it was all just a bad dream. That's my boy. Despite some continuity issues, there are quite a few episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show that revolve around the birth of Richie. This episode takes us back in time to just shortly after Richie's birth. A very frazzled Rob with his hands full of gifts and stuffed animals makes a troubling mistake. He brings home the wrong child. The mistake goes unnoticed for several days, but suspicions mount when friends and family repeatedly express how the child looks nothing like Rob or Laura. Rob does a little bit of detective work before unraveling the truth of the matter. Turns out he was right. Coast to Coast Big Mouth. If you want to laugh out loud until your stomach hurts, make sure you check out this iconic episode. Rob gets Millie and Laura tickets to a game show with a host that is notorious for giving his guests a hard time. In a mashup of words, Laura accidentally reveals that Alan Brady, Rob's boss, is bald on live television. Alan Brady, played by Carl Reiner, is a vain, brash man with a short temper. Afraid that her husband will lose his job due to her blunder, she pays his boss a visit at his office building to set the matter straight. There ensues one of the most famous scenes in TV history, with Rob and Laura in Alan's office in front of an array of toupees on mannequin heads. The situation is tense, to say the least, but the tension is cut through with the aid of side-splitting hilarity. That wraps up our look at Carl Reiner's favorite episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show, so let's take a quick look at the emotional tweet that preceded his death. Nothing pleases me more than knowing I have lived the best life possible by having met and marrying the gifted Stella LaBoste, who partnered with me in bringing Rob, Annie, and Lucas Reiner into this needy and evolving world. He was a truly appreciative man, and it's beautiful to hear the love he had for his life and his family. Thanks for sticking around and honoring Carl Reiner with us. May his life and works never be forgotten. Now we'd like to hear from you. What do you think was his best work? Do you think the Dick Van Dyke Show was his crowning achievement, or was it something else? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to Factsverse for more videos like this.